What's up, Starcraft fans? Today we're doing the tier list for Radiation Zone. Brian, let's hear the mutation.
Rifts to Core Hall is the map where we have to destroy 10 void shards before timer runs out. Each set of void shards we destroy adds time and reveals the next set. Enemy buildings continuously spawn infested units that attack your base. Some enemy units, including the infested, carry a debuff that spreads to your close units upon death. Your units will continuously take damage from it and spread it too. Nukes also randomly fall around the map.
Alright, we have Joni and Edwin with the call with us today. How are you guys?
Doing well?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Alright, how do we rank the commanders this week, Edwin?
Well, it's the first question is, do you have to leave your base to win? And if you don't have to, then that's pretty nice. Second question is, how good are you against Black Death, really? That's the main question, if we're being honest. If you're good against Black Death, then you do great. If you struggle against Black Death, then you suck. So, yeah, just kind of depends on that.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, as someone who's just coming off the back of their own COVID outbreak, I can confirm that it is pretty devastating against hero commanders. I like this mutation. I think it's really interesting. I think what it effectively does is stretch you as a commander both at home and away. If you're up at home with the waves of outbreak and at the same time not contract Black Death, then you are doing pretty well.
Alright, let's begin. Abathur, where do we have him?
Abathur is someone who does really well. My suggestion would be playing potentially P1, looking at you don't want Ultimate Evolutions up this week because they're going to get Black Death and struggle. P1 Devourers on this map are classically super strong. I believe I'm right in saying the magic number is 7, and then use of Swarm Hosts at home for free unit defense, which is always a good thing. And they have decent enough range with the Locusts that you're not likely to get Black Death through any other mechanism. So from my point of view, Abathur's solid S tier this week.
S tier, what do you think, Edwin?
Yeah, I think he's pretty good this week. You do skip the Ultimate Evolutions and you go P1 for sure, I'd say. And as long as you can micro well against the going nuclear, I don't think you're going to have too many problems. You can spam spine crawlers at home to deal with Outbreak because you should have some extra minerals most likely. Or you can just have a pack of roaches at home, whatever you want to do. But I think he's pretty good this week. I had him in A tier, thinking about S. I think he's not as good as some of the others. I think you have a lot more work to do than some other folks, but you can do the work just fine. So I'm fine with S tier. We can go S tier.
Okay, let's put Abathur in S tier. Prestige-wise, first one, right?
Yes.
Alright.
Yeah.
No Ultimate Evolutions this week for Abathur. Alarak, where do we have him?
Alarak is not very good, in my opinion. He doesn't have great static defense. You can make photon cannons, but you don't have a whole lot to back them up necessarily. If you get Wrathwalkers behind them, I guess, but then there's the question of actually going out on the map and doing anything. You could still go P3, although this week I think there's an argument against it because then the mothership, you just pop it, use it, and then it's, back in a few minutes, as opposed to getting Black Death and dying and having to replace it. And the destroyers are also struggle against Black Death, generally speaking. Yeah, I don't think he's great. I think he's going to suffer quite a bit. I had him in E tier.
E tier. What do you think, Joni?
I actually took exactly the same view. I think he's going to really struggle. I think his defense at home is highly problematic. I think there is probably the argument to be made that Alarak himself can be used to defend against the enemy waves and basically used as a sort of sacrificial enemy wave or anti-enemy wave device. I completely agree with not playing P3 this week and using the mothership as a cooldown. One is still going to massively struggle. I had him in E tier as well. I really don't think he's very good this week.
All right. Alarak, more like Alarak in E tier. Moving on. Arcturus, where do we have him?
Arcturus is someone for whom mutation prevents you from using the standard sort of double S strategy of ESO Island. With that being said, you still use ESOs. His bunkers at home are rock solid defense against Outbreak, so that makes life nice and easy. Using the Player 1 expansion to build ESOs in the first instance, and then effectively just dealing with the last area through whatever means, I would suggest some form of nuclear bombardment plus, whatever else you care to throw at it. Whether that be, Pride of August grads, if you want to just teleport them in, Yamato cannon and then Black Death, that is what it is. It's the last sort of bit. But the reality to it is I don't think Arcturus is going to massively struggle this week. I also don't think he's double S tier this week, but I do think he probably is S tier.
S tier. What do you think, Abathur?
Yeah, I would agree with S tier. You're kind of just building up the whole game, dealing with the first 3 sets, and then you have nuclear annihilation and all your other call downs to deal with the final set. So I don't think it's going to be much of an issue for him at all. I had him in S.
All right. Arcturus and S tier. Prestige-wise, first one, right?
No, I would probably play third one
There
on
you
the
go.
basis that you're going to want. I would say probably going to want nuclear annihilation for the last set of shards.
That's actually correct. Yeah, I totally should have said third one. I did mean the first one. I just didn't think that, yeah, you do need a nuke. So you're right on that one. You do need a third one. Moving on, Artanis, where do you have him?
Artanis is similar to Alarak this week. You don't have really much of anything to do against the Black Death. The one saving grace you have potentially is like Tempests over the dead space to actually kill the shards, or the rifts, but actually defending your base during all of that. And even just killing the air units that do exist at the bases could be a bit of a pain, but you'll only lose a couple Tempests as long as you micro well to Black Death in that case, so it shouldn't be the end of the world. But I think he's still quite bad. That's like the only thing he's going to be contributing, and you're probably just going to die in the meantime trying to defend at home. So I had him in E tier as well.
E tier. What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I felt playing Artanis this week is extremely involved. You really have to be very sort of present and controlling of your units, like very, very careful micro, both in defense and offense. So it's sort of real like cognitive overload playing him, despite the fact I did feel that he does have slightly better tools to deal with stuff than Alarak, purely on the basis, exactly as ET said, of Tempests, or if you want to use them, Phoenixes are pretty good as well. They are quick. They can sort of move out of range of Black Death a little bit quicker, obviously. But I think he's still going to be on the struggle bus this week. I had him in D tier. I didn't think he was quite as bad as Alarak, but at the same time, I suspect that is more personal preference than anything else. So I'm sort of happy to have him in E tier as well.
What do you think about D tier? Abathur?
I mean, it's still bad, but let's see. Do I think he's... At least he has something, Alarak doesn't really have anything, but the Tempests is, it's something. Phoenixes, in theory, are something that you can be doing to help. Alarak doesn't even really have that. Like, destroyers are not going to be able to snipe rifts the same way that a Tempest is going to be able to, especially with Disintegrate. So I think that's fair enough. We could go D tier on that.
All right. Artanis in D tier. No prestige because D tier is considered bad. Moving on, Dehaka. Where do we have him?
Dehaka is very good on this map. His strategy is going to be the same as Arcturus's this week in terms of not using ESO Island for his creeper hosts, but instead using the P1 expansion. And then the advantage you've got with the creeper hosts is they can move up carefully through the map. The problem you're going to have is that they may get sort of intercepted by rogue waves of infested on the way up. So sort of escorting creeper hosts very carefully up to the bottom of the sort of fourth rift area is going to be not, I would say, not an insignificant challenge, but at the same time one whereby using Dehaka himself or a pack leader to sort of clear the way on the basis that the pack leaders in particular don't really care if they're getting Black Death. I would probably look at playing P2, utilizing pack leaders to clear waves is my sort of standard strategy on this one. So I don't think that Dehaka is going to intrinsically massively struggle with this. However, I don't think he's going to have quite as easy of a time of it as normal. I had him in A tier for those reasons.
A tier. What do you think, Ebenham?
Yeah, I was pretty much aligned with that. It's the last set's a bit of a pain. Actually dealing with Outbreak at your base is a bit of a pain because Primal Worms are okay, but they're pretty expensive and they're not that good against, especially once you get to like aberrations. I think you should be able to clear before you particularly have to deal with many aberrations at least. And then if you get Black Death on your creeper host, that's annoying, but it should be okay. But yeah, it's mainly getting to the last set. Everything else will be pretty easy to snipe, but I think you can still do it. But yeah, it's definitely not quite S tier for me. So I had him in A as well.
All right, A tier for Dehaka. Prestige-wise, second one? Still second one?
I think still second one. I think the reality on this one, certainly the manner in which I play it, is that you're only really using pack leaders to deal with the attack waves. So the fact that they get Black Death and then don't last long after is not really a concern.
All right, moving on. Fenix, where do we have him?
Fenix is another Protoss commander that I'm not particularly interested in using this week personally. I don't think anyone else should be either. I guess the nice thing is with P2, you can just have your shell farm, stay safe, and then you continue throwing in units and you'll care if they get Black Death. But then there's nukes and there's Outbreak to deal with. And if you do get Black Death in your shell farm, that could not be very nice. But yeah, I don't think he's very good. I had him in E tier as well. I could see D tier with him maybe, but I think probably more like E tier.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I had very similar views. I think that despite the fact that playing P2, in my view, is probably still the way to go. Like ET said, you're going to be replacing more of your hero cluster more regularly than you normally would, which is problematic, particularly when you then put it into the context of needing to deploy static at home in order to keep your shell farm safe, etc., etc. So, not without insignificant challenge here. I sort of conscious of my natural anti-Phoenix bias here. I think he probably does have a slightly better toolkit than Alarak. Yeah, I'm D tier rather than E tier, but I'm very happy either way.
Okay. What do you think, Ebenham? D tier?
Yeah, I think he's probably better than Alarak, yeah, so I think that's fine.
Okay. Let's put Phoenix in D tier. No prestige because D tier is considered bad. Han and Horner, where do we have them?
So Han and Horner have got bombing platforms, which are fine, albeit very, very slow for clearing shards. And I would suggest the reality to it is their defense is also problematic enough that if you are in a position where your ally is not contributing a huge amount, you are going to want to do something to try and speed up the clearing a little bit, because their defense is sort of overly involved and complicated. Basically, mag mines are simply not going to cut the mustard because it's trickles, so they're going to be getting sort of popped too early and at random times. Probably your best bet is going to be a combination of sort of Hellions, Widow Mines, Hellbats, etc. It's going to be really, really micro intensive and really, really attention intensive to get all of that done. Using strike fighter platforms with the Napalm upgrade to deal basically chip damage over 10-second increments to the rifts is going to be really important. And yes, you are going to be able to deal with the first few sets like that. My probable consideration would be to try and build up a fleet of, whether it is battle cruisers, wraiths, Vikings at home, and then deploying them very, very selectively onto rifts to basically mop them up is probably going to be the way you want to do it. Having said that, as you can probably tell from my description, too complicated and involved for my blood. I had them in D tier. I didn't think they were going to be great this week.
What do you think, Ebenham?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough week for them. I don't think they're horrible because they have bombing platforms, but they don't have good static defense, which means they kind of are horrible. I think you just have to be very careful, use minimal amounts of units to defend, try to rely on mag mines for defense as much as you can, and hope that your bombing platforms help out your ally enough to do work. I had them in C tier, but I could kind of see D tier as well.
Okay, both of you are in D tier. Let's put Harrenhorn in D tier. If you're up against Terran, destroy the bunkers first with your air strikers, otherwise you will not be able to hit the target. Moving on, Karax. Where do we have him?
Karax is quite good because he is one of the Protosses that can make cannons and even shield batteries and Kadaran monoliths, and also has space lasers, so you can just fly around with an observer and kill the rifts that way, generally speaking. So he's really good this week. No real issues, I don't think, and I had him in S tier.
What do you think, Joni?
I think exactly the same, and I sort of think ET's basically said it, or I don't feel any need to expound. So yeah, S tier for me.
Third prestige. Moving on, Kerrigan. Where do you have him?
That's a good question. Let me. Oh, okay, right. That's where I've got it. So Kerrigan this week is a slightly tricky one, and it's going to be slightly mechanically dependent based on one's own skill set. So you're going to want to use Kerrigan pretty much as per usual on this map in terms of jumping in, pinging immobilization wave to knock out the area around the rifts and then clearing them up via whatever means. Potentially, I think, sort of a raft of broodlords maybe once some of the air defense is gone. Having said that, you're also going to need to be making careful use of Omega Worms and Queens at home in order to keep Kerrigan buffed and then whack her into Omega Worms to stop Black Death from killing her. So that side of things is going to be problematic. She does have relative defense through the means of sort of spine crawlers, etc. for home. Having said that, it is relatively involved, as with some of these commanders. I didn't have her quite as bad as the D tier commanders, but she's certainly not going to be easy, I didn't feel. So I had her in C tier.
C tier. What do you think, Edmund?
Yeah, I think she is not the best either, because obviously you rely a lot on Kerrigan, and then she gets Black Death, so you either have to let her die or constantly come back to base to like spam her with transfuses from your queens and hide in Omega Worms and things like that. You do have like Brood Lords that you could siege down with, but then air units are a problem. So I don't think she's great. I had her in D tier personally.
D tier.
I think probably my only I think probably my argument for her being in C tier is simply that in my mind she's got better and more consistent options both for attack and defense over the commanders that we've currently got in D tier. And I feel that she's one of the few hero unit commanders who's going to really heavily leverage their hero unit, but can also like keep the hero unit alive comparatively well. Oh. Yeah, so I suppose my only real argument for C tier over D tier is that I kind of feel that she's a little bit better than those in D tier, but I'm happy to be swayed.
Well, I'll say, two out of these three in D tier I had in E tier, so I think that's fair. Yeah, push her up to C tier since we pushed them up to D tier. That's fine.
That's fair. Rising tide lifts all boats, something like that. So Kerrigan goes in C tier.
Rating on a curve.
Yeah. Prestige wise, no prestige or
probably zero. I
think go zero. Yeah.
All right. We have a C tier. Probably someone who's not C tier. Nova, what do you think?
Nova has Liberators. You can and obviously Super Cloak Nova, and she's got decent turrets for defense. She's got most of the pieces, but she definitely has units where a single one gets Black Death and it hurts quite a bit. Liberators and Ravens and Siege Tanks and all that. It's you're playing with fire being around Black Death at all. I think in theory you just kind of defend and then have Nova clear, and then if you need some help with the shards, you just send out like 2 Liberators once the area is cleared, and the Liberators, as long as you keep an eye on them and they don't get nuked, will clear out the shards quite quickly. So I think she's pretty good. I did not quite have her in S tier, but I did have her in A.
What do you think, Joni?
I did have her in S tier because I felt that
I
P3
felt that
Nova
too.
basically clearing. Yeah, P3 Nova clearing on her own does do a surprisingly effective job of clearing the path for Liberators. And as ET said, you really only need sort of 2 or 4 of them to take out shards in extremely good time, meaning that you can basically dedicate everything else to defending at home. There possibly is the argument to be said that if you are looking at a super hard carry of your opponent, i.e., they really are just sort of playing their own game. Sorry, your opponent, your ally, spreading her defenses too thin potentially is a bit of a worry. Like ET said, there is very little margin for error with Nova in terms of her units. She does have railgun turrets, which are pretty good as well, though. So I think that between her static and her siege tanks, etc., she shouldn't really have too many dramas at home. I had her in S tier, but I'm happy to sort of throw it back to ET and see if he's swayed or not.
Muted. I just worry about air comps in particular on the defense. Just how do you kind of hold them in place? You
Airstrike.
don't really have the same. Yeah, airstrike if you hit the airstrike, but
probably, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. If you clear it fast enough, then you're not getting into capital ships. But like if you get into capital ships, then they don't die to just an airstrike, and then Nova has to come home, I guess.
Seeker missile.
Like that's true. That's true. I don't know. It's harder to keep your units from getting Black Death when you're dealing with air, I think, would be my only concern with S. Whereas like in S tier, basically everyone I have in S tier, right? It's like you just hit a point where Black Death, or you start out at a point where Black Death no longer matters like at all to you, because your units are just sitting in bunkers and there's no way for them to really get Black Death at all. And even if they get Black Death, it's not a big deal. If Nova's Liberators get Black Death, you are in a sucky spot.
That's true.
If one bunker goes down and 6 Marines in it get Black Death, that's a couple hundred minerals and you don't care. You can just call a new one down with space energy, as Megs.
I'm pretty happy with that, I think, and particularly considering that we've got Dehaka in A tier as well. I think there is this mutation for.
I think it's really similar to like when we do propagators, and it's like someone in theory is quite good, but what if your ally starts a poop train and you have no way to deal with that? It's like, well, what if your ally, which is not that rare, gives you Black Death because they're stupid? Like
it's super true, and I think with Nova, even worse than like a Dehaka or something like that, there really isn't much margin for error at all. So I'm very happy with her in A tier this week.
Okay, Nova in A tier. Still a lot blonder than Kerrigan though. So let's move on. Yep. Raynor, where do we have him? Oh wait, 3rd prestige, right? Right, 3rd prestige. Yeah. Raynor, where do we have him?
So Raynor, I think doesn't deal with this terribly. Actually, he's got really good defense in form of bunkers and tanks. It is comparatively sort of repairable, quite cheap. So if you do end up getting a tank Black Death or something, then it's not the end of the world to replace. His sort of bigger issue is how do we push out? And I think the reasonable answer to that is that his top bars can get a lot of work done on this map. They're clearing encampments with the Hyperion and then doing shards with the sort of Banshee strike force is entirely like feasible, and then potentially creating some form of air hit squad at home to mop up some of the later shards where the encampments are a little bit denser. Some form of Viking hit squad or BCs to teleport in and use sacrificial tomatoes if you want them to. He really does have quite a lot of options here, all whilst not having to worry too much in terms of his defense causing too much attention. So by no means free, but at the same time also by no means terrible. I had him in B tier.
What do you think, Ebenholm?
Yeah, that was pretty much exactly my thought. You just kind of camp. I would imagine you go like a few spider mine makers, some bunkers, and then just mass battle cruisers or something like that in the back,
Spider-Man
Vikings,
makers.
whatever it is, and just spider mine makers, vultures, whatever you want to call them, and you just mass your units so that you get the better cooldown on
Spider Mamas.
Hyperion and kind of Spider Mamas and Spider Papas, and you just basically clear the map with Banshees and Hyperion, and that's your whole plan, would be my thought. And then in the later, for the fourth set, in theory, you can probably just, oh my goodness, we've been talking too long. You can probably just jump into the fourth set with your battlecruisers and target fire down the shards, and you won't die to Black Death too quickly. So I had him in B tier as well.
Okay, that's not bad. B tier for Raynor. Raynor's blonder than Kerrigan this week. Moving on. Oh, Prestige. Prestige. Yeah, Prestige for Raynor. Third one, right?
I would say third.
All right. Moving on. Stet Boy. Where do you have him?
Stetmann is pretty good this week as well. He has Green Zone, so Black Death be gone, really. Yeah, I had him in A tier for some reason. I think that was a misclick. I think he's definitely more S. You can kind of just spam whatever you want to spam and win with him, realistically. And you have easy defense at home. Just leave some units in a green zone. Doesn't matter if they get Black Death. He's great for your ally as well. So he's really, really, really good this week. I had him in S tier.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, I had misclicked him into A tier as well, and I can't help but feel there's probably a reason for that.
Wave 1. That's the reason. If you get vultures, wave 1, you're dead.
Well, quite. So there is wave 1, which does have significant potential to just nuke your mineral line, utterly. I think there is also the fact that although Green Zone does mitigate Black Death, what it also does by proxy of doing so is it does make Super Gary significantly squishier than normal. So you do have to be quite careful when pushing into things. I think that combined with the fact that Stetmann, his defense at home is very good because you can leave a lot of stuff at home, but sort of squishier Super Gary combined with not having quite the same level of backup as normal. I think that the commanders we've got in S tier are very straightforward. They're very hands off. It's static defense and it's taking out stuff from a distance. I think my reticence to put Stetmann into S tier, despite the fact he's got a plethora of stuff going for him in terms of Green Zone helping out ally, which, if you've got a semi-even competent ally, does or should make life very straightforward. There's still quite a lot going on. And I don't think that Stetmann is less involved than the commanders we've got in A tier. So I sort of, whilst my instinct would be, yes, he does play pretty normally, and yes, he does have resource to allocate to defense at home, etc. I would also possibly suggest that he's not as free as normal, and particularly compared to Dehaka, for instance, I kind of feel there may be more weakness there than with a Dehaka. So I would sort of not necessarily completely question his ability to sit in S tier, but I probably would say, for me, my feeling is that he's possibly more A tier this week.
Okay. What do you think?
I think that's fine. I guess for me, it's really just, I guess the wave 1 thing. If you die to wave 1, then you're not S tier. So if there's even a 1% chance of that happening, then I guess it's not S tier. I think in the later stages of the game, you have plenty of options. You have just like some lings patrolling in the middle of the map, and then behind them, you have your infestors or whatever, and you can just lob endless Roach Ravager into the shard zones or the rift zones, and you're not going to have any trouble clearing those. And even if your infestors get COVIDed, you don't care that much. But
But
the
I
wave
think
one
that
thing, I think, is an argument.
I think that's one of the instances actually where sort of the third forgotten mutator this week going nuclear actually does come into play.
Oh, true. Yeah. But then you can just green or blue zone from your main base, and the Roach Ravager will still be able to make it anywhere on the map, really.
Kind of. Anyway.
Or you can just go like Mass Corruptor.
That's also true.
And just vomit on the rifts.
So it's not a misclick.
No, actually, I must admit, having said everything I've just said, actually, I had completely forgotten that his corruptors are actually extremely good, to the extent that possibly comparable, maybe a slightly weaker version of Abathur's Devourers. So
yeah,
actually,
I think if not for the first wave problem, which is admittedly rare, I think 90% of the time he's S tier. But if you get like vultures, then But beyond that, I think he's S tier. So I'm fine with A though. I think because there is that.
He'll be top of A tier.
Caveat.
There we go.
Yeah, there is that caveat, but beyond that, he's very good.
All right. Moving on. Oh, second prestige, obviously. Stukov, where do you have him?
Stukov is a bit of a. One's instinct would be to play P3 and flood the map as per normal, disposable units, don't care about Black Death, etc., etc., etc. They mop up everything that Outbreak brings. But going nuclear is the ambush in wait on this one. And going nuclear will make it, I would say, incredibly, if not impossibly difficult to really get that critical mass going into the fourth base. So I am, as is my want, not a fan of playing P3 this week. With that being said, I do think that it doesn't make it impossible. I just don't think it's sort of super free. I don't think it's an assumed given, etc. I think you probably will play P3, won't you? Yeah, like tanks are. Sorry, I'm sort of retracting all of my previous statements. Like you may want some tanks at home to defend. Sorry, I've totally lost my thread on that one. But yeah, like moving bunkers up to get critical mass to move into the fourth base is going to be really difficult. You're going to want to spam all your top bars to make sure that comes off successfully. It probably will be doable, but going nuclear is going to cause you like problems on that front. Having said that, I don't think that playing P1 is particularly viable because of Black Death. So yeah, I reckon he's probably B tier. I think it's doable, but not easy. But I'll shut up and let someone more coherent say something now.
What do you think, up at home?
No, anyways, I think he's pretty good this week. Yeah, you go P3. You can make tanks for defense if you want to, but it shouldn't be super necessary. The main problem with P3 is getting to set 4. You can't leave the base with your bunkers. I think they still make it, especially with the mastery, and you have your call downs for that as well. And maybe you can also like go P3 and then make liberators as well. So the liberators just right click the shards and they're basically invincible while they're doing it. So I think he's pretty good for those reasons. I did not quite have him in S tier because there is still the fourth set getting there with the Marines. The likelihood of them making it there, not timing out, and not getting nuked along the way is not great. But with the Liberators, I think they'll still get it done. So I had him in A tier.
Okay. A tier for Stukov. Third prestige, as it turns out. Moving on, Swann, where do you have him?
Swann I have pretty high up this week because he has really good static defense and he has factories and a laser drill and even wraiths if you want to. You can just go and clear out the anti-air and then go into wraiths, or you can literally just kill the rifts with the laser drill, I believe, and you'll still have plenty of time to do it. So I had him in S tier.
What do you think, Joni?
Yes, I wouldn't necessarily say that you have plenty of time to do it, but I do think you've got enough time to do it, particularly when you are backing up. I am personally a fan of backing up P1 Swann's laser drill with a Wraith hit squad. By the time the Wraiths get there, they shouldn't have to be dealing with anything other than rifts, so basically completely fine. And as ET said, his statics completely bomber at home. So yeah, S tier for me.
All right.
I don't think you even want P1, do you? Because like the extra lock on speed isn't that important since you're just targeting 10 rifts with it, and then you still get the top bars that way.
Yeah, cluster enemies are great for eliminating the attack waves.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so I'd probably be inclined to play 2 or 0 then. Although if you play P0 on this, then the concentrated beam times up nicely with the attack waves. So that's sort of my preference for this normally.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wouldn't it do that with P2 as well?
I think, is it not 50% reduced cooldown on the
That's
top
P3.
bars with P2?
That's P3. P2 is just
P3?
the extra gas cost for attacking units. I'd definitely go P2 because you're going to float gas if you're going wraiths, even with P2 with the increased costs. So it's not even a downside, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. S tier?
Yep.
Yeah.
Moving on. Tychus, where do you have him?
Tychus I didn't rate particularly highly this week, although as I've demonstrated, having taken a few weeks off, it may be that I'm rusty and need to get my head back in the game. But Tychus is a hero commander. Black Death does him massively dirty pretty much any way you look at it. When you combine that with the fact that Outbreak is going to force you into splitting your army in some capacity, I would suggest his turrets, for my money, are simply not strong enough to survive beyond the 20-minute mark. And I think that with the added complication of Black Death, you are going to have to be playing in a pretty sporty fashion to get everything done by then, which basically gives you that conundrum of, do I play P2 and try to figure out how to sort of mitigate Black Death through, constantly coming back to get healed up, etc., or do I play, P0 or P1 because I think you still want to be able to use Big Red Button and then figure out how to clear quickly enough to not have to worry too much about sort of defending beyond static at home. So I think there is a bit of a wicked conundrum there for Tychus this week, and I feel that if one is good enough to deal with that, it is going to be extremely complex. I had him in D tier.
D tier. What do you think, Edwin Home?
I think I'm taking crazy pills over here. I don't know. I don't think he's that bad. I had him in A tier because you go P3, you survive to 10 minutes with Rattlesnake's heals out healing Black Death on your pack of mercs, and then I think you then have 10 minutes of constant Odin and a full pack of mercs to clear while your turrets defend at home before aberrations start coming out, and I don't think that's going to be a problem realistically. You should be able to have at least the first 2 sets cleared, so from 10 minutes, because you're still blocking the outbreak at that point if you want to, or you just have turrets at home. And then once Odin comes out, you have a basically unkillable behemoth, and you only have to clear 2 more sets while your turrets defend. I think he's pretty good, actually. I have him in A tier.
What do you think about A tier, Joni?
Interesting.
If, for what it's worth, I have another strategy. You can go as 3rd prestige, or you can go as 2nd prestige. You can hide an outlaw behind turrets, and you can just wait until 10 minutes until you have Big Red Button, which clears out most of the detection. And then you can just hide Crooked Sam nearby and just drop the grenades or the demolition charges on the shards. You can do that for the 2nd base, and for the 3rd base, you can go up the Earth Splitter area, and that gives vision into the next set, so you don't have to go through a camp. And that same area allows you to get vision of the 4th set. So you can just stick around there and just, So
yeah, the sort of the P2 Crooked Sam Odin strategy was kind of what I was thinking in terms of the possibly the easiest way of doing it. I haven't had time to try it, so I'm sort of perfectly happy to defer. I would still query whether he is in the same tier as like a Dehaka or a Nova or someone like that. So I would sort of potentially look to compromise on B tier, but at the same time, if you guys tell me that he is genuinely sort of that easy to do it with, then I'm happy to defer and go for A tier.
Oh, I'm not saying he's easy or good. I'm just saying that's what you can do that.
I don't know. I think people sleep on just how good the Odin is in Black Death mutations. Like it is, you're healing at 4% of your HP per second while you're losing 2, and 2% of the Odin's HP is still like hundreds of health per second that he's healing. You do not die to literally anything. The
Do not-
only potential problem I could see is like a nuke that you can't get out of the way of because the Odin's slow, but then you have 3 medevac platforms that you don't really need for healing because you have Rattlesnake and maybe even Nikora if you want to go overboard with the healing.
Yeah, I'm happy to defer on this one. Yeah, I've like I say, not had time to try. So I'm happy to eliminate it.
I think B tier is fine as well because I mean maybe that's, I don't know.
Plus, his best friend's there.
Yeah, him and Raynor.
You're his best buddy.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of A, so I'm fine with putting him in B tier. I do think he's pretty good though.
Cool.
Don't mention the S word. I'm on 4 hours and it's past midnight. I'm trying to do mind over matter here. Let's move on. Second prestige. Oh, no. Do you guys want to go third prestige, right? Third prestige. That's what we're going with. Vorazun. Where do we have him? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. Vorazun is okay. You basically just hide behind a cloak wall of cannons and use your top bars to try and clear the rifts. It's not great, but it'll help, especially if you have an ally. So I figured if you're doing 50% of the work, which you could probably reasonably do, C tier.
What do you think, Joni?
Yeah, Vorazun's not as bad as one's knee-jerk reaction leads you to believe, but you do have to be careful of a couple of things with her. Building the sort of third proxy nexus in order that you don't get mineral lines infested with cloaked units coming home is absolutely imperative. Making sure that those sort of cloaked walls are fine is also good, and then obviously splitting DTs using time stop in order to take out rifts is a really sort of critical part of this. But yeah, she's not sort of grotesquely complicated to play, and as long as you do make sure that you're not allowing infested or Black Death cloak units back into your mineral line, then you should be fine. So yeah, C tier.
C tier. I'm too tired to argue. Let's put Vorazun in C tier. She had her 1 prestige. Oh, no. We're not even using that anymore. Okay, we're using second prestige. That goes in C tier. Moving on, Zagara. Where do we have him?
Zagara is really good, and I think she's also got some decent options here. You know, P1 Banelings to defend at home are disposable units, so it doesn't matter if they get Black Death at all, and then using Scourge to take out the rifts at the same time, also using using P2 P tier Corruptors. But yeah, P2 Corruptors are also very strong. I think that if you're going to do that in particular, you're going to want to be deploying bar launchers at home as well to really thin stuff out defensively. P1, yeah, I mean, do that as well. She's got a plethora of options. She's really good, and she's basically pretty free in terms of taking out rifts as well. So I had her in S tier.
What do you think, Edmund?
Yeah, she's pretty darn good. You've got a lot of different ways you can approach it, and she'll do well. So yeah, S tier.
S tier, not P tier. Very sad. Zeratul, where do you have him?
Another great one. You've got cannons that don't care about Black Death. You have Zeratul that does, but you're basically just using him to get your artifacts initially and in the later stages as well, I guess. And you've got observers to get vision for your cannons, and you have a relatively straightforward, simple time. So I had him in S tier as well.
What do you think, Joni?
Yes, totally agree in terms of the strategy. My only reservation is around going nuclear and the cannon projections and the sheer volume of cannons that are required to get the job done both at home and away. So I had a slight question mark in my head around whether that makes him S tier or A tier. I think that liberal use of the Telbrus Legion in terms of enabling you to pre-clear areas to a certain extent prior to putting cannons down is certainly something to do. Yeah, I was slightly less optimistic about exactly how free it would be, but I'm very willing to be swayed into S tier if ET thinks it's appropriate.
Okay. Edwin did say S tier though, so I guess that. Wait, did you? I'm not hallucinating, right? Yeah. Okay.
I think demote dude for the fourth set and the third set, is going to do basically all of the enemies gone, at least dangerous ones. So I don't think it's too bad with the cannons. Just don't spam them all out immediately.
All right. Zeratul goes in S tier. All right. By the way, for Zagara second prestige or first?
I think either is completely viable, really dependent on your playstyle.
Okay. Zeratul second prestige. Do we have a double S?
No, I don't think we do this week, if I'm honest.
All right. Top of S tier?
I think Minsk or Karax.
Yeah, right. I was going to say Minsk or Karax, yeah.
Then?
I think Abathur's probably bottom of S.
Okay.
I was okay. I was going to put Zeratul below Abathur, if I'm honest. I think Abathur's.
That's fine.
Yeah, and then possibly Zagara above Swann.
Hey.
She's a bit quicker.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Zagara's blonder than Swann. Who's top of A?
I think Nova or Stetmann. Not Stukov. Nova or Stetmann.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I mean, Stetmann does so much to support his ally as well. Yeah. And then I think that's probably good. Yeah. And then I'm perfectly prepared to put Tychus above Raynor. I'm not going to fight that battle.
Okay. C tier?
And yeah, I think Kerrigan's better.
Yeah.
All right.
And then
D tier.
Possibly. I think I think maybe Hun and Horn are better than Fenix.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So what does Alarak have to do to be out of E tier? I would like to know because I played Alarak. It was dreadful. I technically got more kills than my ally, but that was strictly because my ally was second prestige, which means they don't get kills. I finished them off. But it was sucky.
Yeah. I mean, if you're playing with someone who's got brilliant static, maybe if you want that synergy, maybe an Alarak and a Raynor or something like that, and then sending a warp prism round with overcharge on it or something like that might it gives Alarak a bit of utility, but the reality is he's going to struggle this week.
Wrathwalkers can walk in the dead space like an air unit.
Ooh. Oh yeah, make Wrathwalkers air units. That would make him maybe even C tier. If they can walk over dead space.
Tempests like Artanis style.
They'd be Tempests. but Tempests, but they have overcharge. So that would put them in C tier, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Like an Artificer of Souls with flying.
Yeah, and they have a hero. Yeah, I can totally just stab in front. So that's C tier at least. Maybe top of C tier even, above Kerrigan. So, alright, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for an all please leave it in a comment. I'll see you guys next time.